Welcome to the Tipping Point Show. I'm Jimmy Evans. I'm so glad that you've joined me today. We have a very special program today talking about Israel. There are so many things happening related to the nation of Israel right now. It's unbelievable. And Brian Schrauger, who is our Israel representative, our correspondent there, is going to be joining me here in just a minute. Before he joins me, let me tell you about a couple of resources that we have available. One is Where Are the Missing People? This is a book I wrote along with my daughter, and this is to help people who get left behind. When the rapture happens and we're taken as believers, unfortunately, there are going to be billions of people left behind during the worst 7 years of human history. Well, this book leads them to Jesus. First of all, the question that everybody's asking after the rapture is, where are the missing people? And the devil's going to give a false answer and a deceiving answer, but we're going to give people the truth, and that is the rapture happened and you've been left behind, but here's how you can have a relationship with Jesus, and here's what's about to happen in the world that you need to prepare for. So this is a book that you can leave on your coffee table, your nightstand, your car, your dorm room, your office, that you leave around, and it may not mean much to you. Now, people get really blessed by reading this book. Believers get really blessed by it. It will bless you to read it and just help you to know what's going to be happening in the future. But for an unbeliever, this is a lifeline for them. Once we're gone and it's laying there, they're going to pick this up, and they're not just going to read it. There's going to be a whole bunch of people reading it. And so if this is something you're interested in, just go to endtimes.com, go to store, and you can buy this there. But if you're buying multiple copies, a lot of people buy multiple copies. Some churches buy multiple copies of this for their church. Big discounts. The more you buy, the bigger the discount is. So if this is something that interests you, go to endtimes.com for that. We also, my wife and I, we celebrated our 51st wedding anniversary last Saturday. And so we wrote a book called I Will. This is 365-day devotionals for couples. And so as a couple, you can just pick this book up every day, take 4 or 5 minutes over the coffee table, dinner table, in bed, wherever you want to read it. And it just kind of leads you in just a little devotional to help your marriage. Every day begins with an affirmation, I will. And you just read that. A lot of people have been blessed by this. This just came out about a month ago. We also have a imitation leather gift edition, if this is something that you're interested in. You can buy it for yourself, you can buy it for a friend, but this is on xomarriage.com. If this is something you're interested in for yourself or to give away, it would sure be a blessing to you or to someone else that you know. So Brian Schrauger worked as a journalist in Israel since 2014. He served for 2 years as the head of the news division for Bridges for Peace, and until 2021 as the bureau chief for USA Radio Network. He's joining me today to talk about current events in Israel. Brian, thank you so much for joining me. So much is happening in Israel today. It's amazing.
It is. And in fact, as we speak, Israel is celebrating its Independence Day, which is unique. In Israel, every year you have Memorial Day and Independence Day right next to each other. And so normally, in normal years, you see the country going from a posture of sorrow and sadness and honoring those who have died, either in battle or in terrorist attacks, to a shift in a single day to a celebration of life. This is a very unique cultural aspect about Israel, and it's very instructive. This year, however, is different. The move from yesterday's Memorial Day to today's Independence Day celebration isn't as much, it doesn't feel like a celebration to a lot of people. As we speak, I'm actually at a barbecue at a friend's home in Jerusalem. And, the general feeling here is that we don't really feel like doing this year, but we need to be with each other. And so normally too, like on Independence Day, there are picnics in the park. There are a lot of flags out. And one big thing that happens normally on Independence Day is you have the IAF flying formations over the city, over the country, right? Not this year. They're not doing that this year. They did fly formations yesterday when there was a ceremony happening in Jerusalem honoring those who have died and remembering them, which is not just in the distant past, but it's happened, those who have died just over the last 7 months.
You know, I'm sure there is also the sense that you don't let your guard down like on October 7th, because all that. Well, I want to read a couple of scriptures here, Brian, but this is the 76th anniversary of Israel's independence. And the reason that's significant Matthew 24, Jesus said, learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch has already become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see all these things, know that it is near at the doors. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. So Jesus says, and he's talking about the end times here, the generation that sees this, the end times unfold, will see all things fulfilled. Now, some people will argue with that, and they'll say, well, he's talking about the tribulation or whatever. Let me read one more text here, because I believe these two go together. In the Old Testament, Joel, for behold, in those days and at that time, when I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, that's 1948, I will also gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will enter into judgment with them there on account of my people, my heritage Israel, whom they've scattered among the nations, and they've divided up my land. Well, see, the first time, Israel's the only nation in the history of the world that's been dispossessed twice and come back. The first time was to Babylon, to one place, and they came back 70 years later from one place. The second time was in AD 70, when the Romans killed over 1 million Jews, destroyed the city and the temple, and took, many of them, back to Rome, where they ultimately got scattered around the world. And so God is saying here, in those days and at that same time, when I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, I'm going to enter into judgment. The valley of Jehoshaphat is the valley between the Temple Mount and the Mount of Olives. It means Jehovah has judged. It's the valley of judgment. And so Jesus, according to Zechariah 14, Revelation 19, his feet will touch the Mount of Olives when he returns. And he then was going to destroy those who have come against Jerusalem to destroy it. But the thing that's interesting here, Brian, in those days and at that same time, when I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem, I'm going to gather all the nations because of the way that they've treated my people, my heritage Israel, whom they've scattered among the nations, and they've divided up my land. You can check every box in there. It's all happened. So I don't know when Jesus is returning. We never set dates here on the show, but we're 76 years into this. And so Jesus talked about a generation. Psalm 90 says the days of a man's life are 70 years. I'm 70, I don't like that scripture. The days of a man's life are 7.
Close.
or if,
right behind you.
Or if by reason of strength they're 80 years, I'm believing in that one. But we're seeing, first of all, this is what the Bible says. Secondly, it just seems like we're at this moment in history where there's no going back. That's what it seems like. What do you think?
I agree 100%. At the barbecue that I'm at is a group of friends, and almost all of them are in journalism here in Israel. And so these are people who are doing news for a major TV station, and a lot of them are writing for the Jerusalem Post and for even international publications like the Wall Street Journal and things like that. So what I'm saying this because what I'm hearing here, I think, is very reflective of the mood. And what I'm hearing in this regard is the United States has melted down in terms of the rising anti-Semitism, what we're seeing erupting on the campuses. And one comment I just heard coming in from the outside to speak with you is that the conditions for anti-Semitism, the predilection, the tendency toward anti-Semitism was already in place before October 7. We began to see it erupt in the COVID thing because of the conspiracy theories that this was being engineered by some entity, and that was beginning to feed anti-Semitism or erupt. It was beginning to erupt because Israel supported and endorsed vaccines. And whether or not you agree with vaccines, what happened is the narrative generated by this Q individual or entity was being mainstreamed into, especially among evangelical Christians, supported conservative Christians, and a lot of them did not know what to do then with the reality that Israel was at the forefront of bringing vaccines in. All that to say, I don't get into that debate, but anti-Semitism began to erupt during the COVID thing. And now with October 7, what happened is suddenly it became acceptable for everybody in every, in every cultural position to say Israel's a bad guy. And so it just poured fuel on the fire of anti-Semitism that had already been ignited.
It's unbelievable, Brian. I mean, it's supernatural, and I say this, and that is, anti-Semitism is not an ideology, because no one can really articulate why they hate Jews. It's a spirit. I believe it's demonic. It's just a demonic spirit, and it seems as though on October 7th, the gates of hell were just opened, and every anti-Semitic spirit, was let loose. Now, this is an article. And this is, again, unbelievable. This is last week. The United Nations votes to upgrade Palestinian statehood. And it says the United Nations General Assembly voted 143-9 to upgrade the Palestinian status as a non-member observer state, granting it all but voting rights with regard to all activities related to its plenum. And now the United States stood against it. We voted against it. Australia supported it. Canada, Great Britain, and Ukraine abstained. But the vote was 143-9. After Hamas attacks Israel, they promote their status in the United Nations. It's unbelievable. This September 20th and 21st, we invite you to join us at Fellowship Church in Grapevine, Texas for the Tipping Point Prophecy Conference. As we approach Rosh Hashanah, thousands of believers will come together to worship, understand world events through the lens of Bible prophecy, and anticipate the imminent return of Jesus Christ. Our conference kicks off with an evening of praise and worship featuring Dr. David Jeremiah, followed by a day packed with insights from renowned speakers, Max Lucado, Dr. Mark Hitchcock, Billy Crone, Ed Young, and Rabbi Jonathan Cahn. Don't miss this transformative gathering. Secure your place today at conference.endtimes.com. For those unable to attend in person, live streaming is available. endtimes.com subscribers receive a 50% discount. Join us with your church group or friends for a weekend of profound spiritual impact and fellowship. Prepare for the Lord's return at the Tipping Point Prophecy Conference. Witness prophecy unfold.
Yeah, it's mind blowing. The reality, of course, is that the Palestinians cannot gain official status apart from the approval of the UN Security Council. So that's probably not going to happen as long as the U.S. continues to support Israel. But of course, as you and I both know, we're seeing cracks in that support already. It's been pretty good. It has been pretty good, but there are indications that it could crumble.
So I want to talk about Palestinian statehood for just a minute. And so now this is my thinking, and I want you to challenge me if this is not good thinking. It seems to me that today Israel is in an impossible situation because world opinion dramatically favors a two-state solution, including the United States. We're pressuring you guys. Okay, Netanyahu, and I don't think it's just Netanyahu, but the military or the government of Israel is saying, we will never do that. We will never make a deal with Palestinian Authority. We'll never make a deal with Hamas or Hezbollah. We'll never make a deal with our enemies again. So it seems to me, Brian, that this is kind of exactly the scenario of the end times and what the Bible says when the world hates Israel. The nations are against Israel, as we just saw in the United Nations vote. A few are standing with them, including the United States. In the United States, we're pressuring them to divide up the land. Remember Joel 3 that I just read there? He says, I'm going to come into judgment because you've divided up my land. Well, the United States is active. The Hamas has Gaza because the United States pressured Israel into giving that up in 2005.
Exactly.
Okay. So, but do you think there's any way that Israel would enter into a two-state solution?
No. You may hear political words that sound like, oh, we're willing to consider it, but living here, the clear the clear sense is no. Israel cannot tolerate. It's impossible for Israel to tolerate a fully sovereign enemy state or state period, but especially an enemy state on the borders of the so-called pre-67 boundary. And it can't defend itself. I mean, before 1967, you had the enemy, the Syrian enemy, shooting Israelis from the Golan Heights. I mean, they were like sitting ducks. Israel cannot give up the Golan Heights. It would be absolute foolishness. If you drive north in Israel and you go around toward Tel Aviv and go north, it's a very narrow corridor. It's only like 15, 16, maybe 20 miles wide from the Mediterranean to the boundary, the old boundary of the so-called West Bank. So nobody here really that I don't encounter anyone that really believes it's possible. There are ideologues in everywhere. I mean, there's always somebody who says, "Oh, it has to be done," and it's kind of a leftist thing. But Israelis are largely very pragmatic, and the sense here is that no, we've been there, done that. We tried. Yeah, we left Gaza completely, and they had an opportunity to build a Qatar, if you will.
They sure did.
They had a beautiful piece of land and property. It could have been an absolute gem in the world. And instead, they chose to put all the money into these hundreds of miles of tunnels with the specific objective of obliterating the Jewish state. And a two-state solution is not going to be acceptable here. And in fact, I may have mentioned this to you before, Palestinians don't want a two-state solution.
No, they do not.
They want a one-state
Yes,
solution.
they do. Yes.
But their one-state solution is bring in all of these so-called refugees that now are currently in Jordan and Syria, several million, bring them back in and vote all the Jews out, basically destroying the Jewish state and, creating a distinctly non-Jewish, anti-Jewish state. That's their objective. The two-state solution, as it's being presented in the United Nations and in the Western press, is not under serious consideration by either side here.
That's absolutely true. The Palestinians want a one-state solution, and Benjamin Netanyahu, after October 7th, he said the only difference between Fatah, the Palestinian Authority, and Hamas is not what they want, it's just how they're going to do it. Hamas is just going to kill you, and the Palestinian Authority, or Fatah, they're going to do it more politically. But it's a death sentence. Now, let's go back to Gaza just a minute. Egypt and Qatar and other countries refuse, this is another news story, refuse Israel's offer to administrate Gaza. So Israel has gone to some of the Arab countries, beginning with Israel and Qatar, and said to them, once we clean up Gaza, we want you to administrate it. And all of the Arab countries are saying, we don't want to have anything to do with this. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Israel has said openly, we're not giving it back to Hamas. We're not giving it back. So this is another diplomatic point of impasse. I don't know how they're ever going to be able to get past this, because you know good and well, Netanyahu, they're not giving back the Gaza to anyone other than someone who has international trust. And the Palestinian Authority doesn't have that.
No, it doesn't. I'm laughing, I'm smiling as you say this, because no other country in the Middle East wants anything to do with the Palestinians. They like the Palestinian cause, but they don't like the Palestinians. They are very much looked down upon and regarded as a nuisance. And nobody wants that. The Egyptians, by the way, are not Arabs, they're Egyptian. And so you have a very different cultural thing there, and they don't want their culture diluted with this, or a conflict coming up with it. So, yeah, it's just not going to happen in terms of Hamas is not going to be allowed to stay. Although right now everyone's throwing up their hands. Are we really going to get rid of Hamas or not? The Palestinian Authority, no one here wants to see them in charge because they're not going to really be any better. But it's important to note, by the way, that Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, he can't live a whole lot longer. And once he's out of the picture, the sentiment right now is, well, bring in Hamas. They're doing something. So Hamas would actually probably win elections today, which is one reason Abbas has not allowed elections to be held in 15 years, something like that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, they're not going to get rid of Hamas in this atmosphere because there's so much scrutiny on Israel right now. They've done everything they can to preserve life. And by the way, Brian, yesterday, the United Nations cut their estimates in half of the number of civilians that have been killed in Gaza. And
I saw that. Yes.
They were getting their information from Hamas. They were getting their information from, and I've got this right here. It says the UN cites data from the Gaza Ministry of Health controlled by Hamas. And so Hamas is sitting here feeding them all this stuff. Well, they cut those estimates in half. So they're estimating that there's been 34,844 people killed in Gaza and 4,900 women, 7,700 children, which is way too many to be killed. But Hamas hides behind the women and children.
Of course.
Exactly. They build their military installations in daycare centers and schools and things like that, hospitals. And so Israel is in an unbelievable situation.
Hamas uses its population and celebrates. I mean, they accomplish everything they want to accomplish when their people are killed. And Israel makes telephone calls. It drops thousands of leaflets. It tells people, get out of the way. Sometimes Hamas won't let them. Sometimes Hamas blocks people from leaving because it wants them there as human shields. And of course, they inflate numbers. Someone here recently, and you can find this story, did an analysis of the death data, statistics coming out from Gaza, from Hamas, and noted that it was too regular to be realistic. In other words, there was too smooth of a curve. It wasn't credible. And yet the whole world has been buying these statistics until just recently. And I think the UN estimate dropped by something like 11,000 people. So one meme going around here the last few days there has been a miracle. The UN has raised 11,000, 12,000 men, women, and children from the dead.
Yeah, there you go. That's as close as they're going to get to a miracle. Thank you for joining us here today on the Tipping Point Show. Hope you enjoyed this. And this kind of brings us up to date now on Israel and what's going on over there right now. But we'll continue to keep you up to date on breaking news and on endtimes.com. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe to endtimes.com for $7 a month. If you are a subscriber, thank you. Thank you very much for all that you do for us and helping us to reach people and keep coming back to you. I'll see you next time right here on the Tipping Point Show. God bless you.